Hey everyone, this is Dr. Sho, the Japanese behaviorist. Naruto captures the ideal Japanese leadership quality, but you may not agree with me. You might wonder, how could he become a Hokage, a leader of the prestigious Konoha village, when he's not intelligent, he's not diplomatic, he's not a visionary, and he's even comical at times. He's a really good guy with overwhelming power, but he's not a leader. The answer is Japanese are looking at somewhere else for the leadership quality. So what are they? Let's take a look at Naruto's features one by one. Number 1. Naruto is virtuous. He has an innocent heart. I talked about this quality on a video about Goku from Dragon Ball. Basically, having a pure, innocent heart is the basis of Japanese virtue. Unlike Goku, whose passion is to become stronger, Naruto's passion is to become the best Hokage. And Chinese Confucianism tells us that the best quality of a leader is benevolence. And he has this quality. He rather naively believes that everyone can be benevolent, and his benevolence will bring peace to the world. And he acts on it, rather naively and foolishly, but persistently and courageously. And the Japanese love this quality. They're fine with their leaders being a little naive or not so bright, but they cannot tolerate when their leaders are cunning and egoistic. They want their leaders to be an ethical guide and not a manager or a visionary like Americans want their leaders to be. Number 2. Naruto is modest. This is an interesting one. Naruto and his wife continues to live in an apartment like everybody else even after he becomes a Hokage. He is indifferent to wealth, and rightly so. Confucius said, "When you practice benevolence, you won't be rich." And the samurais adopted this philosophy and often looked down the aristocrats who lived luxuriously. The samurais developed the minimalist aesthetic as a leadership quality. And this is very different from the Western world, which sees financial success as proof of their talents. The Japanese ask their leaders to be modest and live like regular people. Up until this point, the ideal Japanese leadership quality reflects the ancient Chinese teachings of Confucius. But from now on, Chinese influence disappears and the ancient Japanese tradition comes up. And it gets rather weird. Number 3. Naruto is democratic. Naruto's nindo is that he can be friends with anybody and they all can agree on his benevolent ideals. He says that the leader has to be chosen by people, and this is a very democratic way of thinking. This is a sharp departure from Confucius, who believed that the leader is chosen by a godly heaven, and regular people should follow the guidance of the chosen one. Instead, the Japanese prefer weak leadership and democracy. Even samurais were democratic, and they often rejected the leaders who became a dictator. Even today, Japanese companies are pretty much controlled by the employees, and the stockholders don't have much control over their companies. The Japanese want their leaders to be an ethical guide, but they don't want them to actually control. And Naruto does exactly that. Number 4. Naruto belongs to the families of the leaders. Ancient China developed a very advanced system about 1,000 years ago. They chose their government officials by written exams. It was a very modern system. Japanese didn't take that. Japanese went by the bloodline. The Japanese think a leader should have a good bloodline. And Naruto has it all. It turned out that Naruto's father was the previous Hokage and his mother was in the lineage of the founder of the village. Lucky him, he has a perfect bloodline to become a leader. Japanese people think it's natural for children of the leaders to be leaders. And you can see this practice almost all the organizations in Japan. Major political parties, large corporations, hospitals, and even artists and artisans. They are all the sons and daughters of the previous leaders and the founders. You cannot be a kabuki performer unless you are born in the family. Even today, you cannot succeed a sushi restaurant unless you are son of the owner. Number 5. Naruto is a shaman. Now this one sounds a little odd, but we are climbing up the leadership hierarchy, and Japanese culture is old. So the higher we get into the hierarchy of leadership, the more supernatural we get. When the Japanese adopted the Chinese government system 1000 years ago, they made two big modifications to it. One was that they did not adopt the written exam system. And the second one was that they promoted the religion department to be the top of the government hierarchy. So the Japanese emperor's main jobs are 1. To overlook the religious affairs, and 2. To overlook the governance. In this sense, the Japanese emperors are just like the popes of the Roman Catholic Church. The priesthood is a very important aspect of Japanese leadership. Naruto is a jinchuriki, a human body that sealed the monster within. The monster that caused a lot of disasters. In this sense, Naruto is a shaman that calms down the monster / the natural disaster. He has a shaman quality. Maybe this is far-fetched, and you may say this has nothing to do with the modern Japanese society. And you're right for the most part. But this tells you an interesting aspect of Japanese leadership. That is, the only time people ask their leaders to intervene is when there is a problem. The leaders are there to resolve the problem, just like the shaman is there to calm down the natural disasters by communicating with a god. They are not expected to take an active role in everyday business. Number 6. Naruto is a reincarnation of a god. Now this is the last and the highest quality a leader can have in Japanese culture. As we discussed before, Japanese believes that the legitimacy of the leadership resides in the bloodline. And the best of all bloodlines in Japan is that of the imperial family, whose bloodline goes back to the gods in Japanese mythology. But unlike popular beliefs, the emperors are not the gods themselves. Their family lineage is that of a human who was closest to the gods. And that's why the imperial family is a family of shaman and not the families of gods. This rather subtle difference is well depicted by Naruto's relationship to the gods. Naruto turned out to be a reincarnation of Ashura, a son of the god. And Naruto's maternal family lineage is also coming from Ashura. But Naruto is not a god, nor his mother a god, nor his mother's tribe a god. It is not even easy to say how much Ashura is a god. He's kinda god but not fully there because he is the third generation. And this kind of vagueness is exactly what the imperial lineage is. And that's why they are shamans who communicate with the gods and not the gods themselves. So, I have listed 6 qualities Naruto have as the best leader. When I come to think about it, Naruto is super gifted. Maybe he's the most gifted character in the whole series, which is odd because the original theme of the comic was about a boy who had worst of all becomes the best of all by pure effort. But I wonder how many Japanese would prefer that kind of story. Lastly, this whole situation about the bloodline sounds pretty helpless for ordinary people in Japan. But there is a way out. As I talked about in another video, Japan is polytheistic. There are millions of gods in Japan, and Japanese people call charismatic pioneers a god. The god of baseball, the god of car manufacturing, the god of manga, the god of sushi. Even if you don't have a good bloodline, you can be a god and you can start the new bloodline. Remember, Japanese gods are not absolute. In this sense, it's possible for Might Guy to become a god of martial arts. He is every way similar to Naruto than any other characters in the series. He has a pure heart, he is benevolent, and he is charismatic. He may not be able to become a Hokage in a Konoha village, but hey, he can start his own village. So, what do you think about Japanese leadership qualities? Do they match with those of yours? Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. ありがとうございました。